Hello and welcome to Atlantic Video View. Hello and welcome to the East Lancashire Railway. Returning to Rawtenstall, a celebration of 20 years of railway service between Ramsbottom and Rawtenstall. Our programme is a video and photographic history of the work of the East Lancashire Railway in joining Ramsbottom to Rawtenstall, between arriving at Ramsbottom in 1987 and on to 1991. This is a tribute to the working members of the East Lancashire Railway Preservation Society and the coordination of efforts from the East Lancashire Railway. And so, without further ado, let's head back to 1987 and find out where we were just after the opening to Ramsbottom. Rawtenstall station, the north end of the line, was seriously overgrown, and indeed there were engineering problems at Ewood Bridge. Following the opening to Ramsbottom and the successful weekend sorties with our steam engines northwards, we were becoming a very popular railway line. This should not detract from the fact that there was still a lot of work which needed doing, both here in Ramsbottom and further north on the line through to Rawtenstall. As our two locomotives come to a halt in Ramsbottom, we can see that the ticket office was still the temporary one and the new station buildings were being constructed in the background. In terms of looking northwards and travelling onwards to Rawtenstall, on the 31st of May 1988 the light railway order had been sorted out. Quite a bit of engineering had already taken place. A lot had been concentrated on Ramsbottom signal box, as we can see here, and indeed on the road crossing, which at this time had no gates, and indeed was only a single line. Bury Council had taken on the management of the reconstruction of 4 bridges. The first one, seen here, is Strongstry Bridge. Only small but vital. This would have taken the line straight through to the station at Irwell Vale. And resorting to our helicopter over Irwell Vale as we head northwards, the first of the viaducts comes into view, and this is Hardsough Wier. And the second one coming into view right now is Lower Ashen Bottom Viaduct. Lower Ashen Bottom Viaduct here can be seen from alongside the river. The structures themselves were composite decks of a steel beam with concrete. And as we know later on in history, this one was to actually wash away and needed rebuilding. Hardsough Wier is the one closer to Irwell Vale, but as you can see here, it is a much longer bridge because it actually spans 2 footpaths besides the river. All of these structures were well on the way, if not completed, by summer of 1989. The fourth and final structure is that of the New Hall Hay Viaduct just before the level crossing at Rawtenstall West. Previous works had been undertaken without the need for works trains. Obviously the completion of the bridges and the slewing of the track work over them meant that works trains could now progress to Rawtenstall. That's of course after you've laid the track. Here at Irwell Vale, mid-1989 once again, Lancashire County Council are constructing the new Irwell Vale station. The East Lancashire Railway volunteers are busy laying track to try and get us somewhere towards Rawtenstall. And on this rather warm summer's day, both Phil Bailey and his wife can be seen here fettling the track through Irwell Vale. Leaving Phil and his wife to have some dinner here at Irwell Vale, we take the brake van back down the line towards Ramsbottom. And here we get our first views of the newly constructed Strongstry Bridge. Our task at Ramsbottom was to collect refreshments and return them to Irwell Vale for the workforce. So let's just take a look at some of the more interesting parts of the line as we head back up to Irwell Vale. Our first few shots are really of the track work. Here we see the points which are going into the still existing Ramsbottom North run round sidings. But just look at the lack of trees that there are around here. You can actually see up the valley, which here 20 years down the line you certainly cannot. Once around the corner here, it's interesting to note that the leachate treatment works for the paper mill had not yet been constructed, and this crossing here just about represents where the crossing is now. The fire station can be seen here on the left hand side, and of course the old people's homes that are there now had not yet been constructed either. As we head through the stations here at Stubbins, we can see the structure on the left hand side here, which was the passenger underpass which went off underneath the railway line towards the right. This needed some structural reassurance. And again, once round the corner in the distance there, we head over the new build at Strongstree. The other bridges, the viaducts up the line, at the time that this was taken were under construction. So this of course was the focus of our attention. Around the corner once more, and so to our arrival at Irwell Vale, newly being constructed and with the lines going straight through, heading for Rawtenstall. Returning to Ramsbottom, and Saturday the 8th of July 1989. The level crossing here, as we can see, was closed. The bollards were put up, the notices laid down. Some serious work was about to take place. The two engineers, our very own Phil and the very NBC engineer, were discussing how to undertake the work. With the pneumatic drills out, things commenced. JCB started digging up the soil, and on this day we were to commence laying the second track across the level crossing at Ramsbottom, heading northwards to Rawtenstall. Yes, it was this early in the morning. About 6:30, 7 o'clock the work started. And there was a considerable amount of craneage on the site in order to help us move the railway lines across so that we could lay the road properly. Here we can see the sleepers going down and all the people, volunteers, that had mustered to do the work. That's not to say that services stopped running. They certainly didn't. And by about 6 o'clock in the evening we can see that the two sets of track had been laid, the vibrator was out, and the second track had almost been lined up ready for us going through to Rawtenstall. This would be where it joins. Many of the volunteers that you can see are left standing here actually spent a 12-hour day working to achieve the end results that the railway now has. A superb two-line crossing at Ramsbottom on the north side. And as the light began to fade, the final truck came across the crossing. This was with the coarse material which makes the actual road surface itself. With the road roller laying away quite nicely, let's just zoom back and take a look at the finished product. From our amateur footage, let's head forward to October 1989 and
25901's first foray was on the gala day, but here she is in use on an engineer's train with the J94 behind. As is well known, the East Lancs is in the process of extension to Rawtenstall. Thanks to superb public relations on the part of this railway, we were kept fully up to date on progress and were able to record these stages of their achievement. Here, the little Barclay 040 saddle tank number 1 pushes the engineer's train out of Bury North Yard. At Bers, the saddle tank double heads with Gothenburg as they take the train northwards. On the extension, there are no run-round facilities, so the engines topped and tailed the train. Work involves the reinstatement of the level crossing at the present terminus at Ramsbottom. On the previous weekend, 25901 had been used on works trains as units of the Royal Engineers 202 Field Squadron had helped relay missing sections of track at Ewood Bridge. Of course, normal passenger trains had to be worked. Gothenburg was assisted by the J94 on a southbound train. The first train to Rawtenstall was a members' special, headed by the little Buckley No. 1, which has traditionally been the engine used to open each new section of the East Lancs.
It had been 27 years since steam had last been to Rawtenstall, and so our photographers had a field day. Let's just take a look at both these trains in Rawtenstall station.
Departs Bury with an engineer's train. Much work has been carried out on the extension. The load on this occasion is the ex-Dinting footbridge for Ramsbottom. The Hymek has now worked over 2,000 miles on the East Lancs, often working the Saturday diesel service.
At the end of 1989, several members spent their Christmas installing a new footbridge at Ramsbottom Station. It also afforded an opportunity to demonstrate the skills of the Society's steam crane. The footbridge was formerly at Dinting in Derbyshire and was brought to Bury in 1987. The steam crane was then put to the task of removing the temporary station building from Ramsbottom to take up a similar role in the site at Rawtenstall.
In December 1989, the railway's steam crane is seen in use at Rawtenstall station, as the temporary station building, a prefabricated wooden structure originally used at Ramsbottom, is lifted into position on the platform. Although now a terminus, this station was originally an intermediate one on the line to Bacup, also reached from Rochdale. In time, a new station building will appear here, but the East Lancashire Railway can be congratulated on its amazing progress in so short a time.
The early months of 1991 saw the station at Rawtenstall moving towards completion. Early plans to open the line in October of 1990 had been abandoned, and hopes were now on a new date, April the 27th, 1991. Meanwhile, regular weekend services continued through the winter. Leaving Castlecroft, a train hauled by the RSH number 1.
On the north end of a line, there are actually 3 sets of gates. Here we can see Rawtenstall West. Installation of the structures and operating mechanisms was necessary, as at Ramsbottom and at Townsend Fold.
Our cab riding was not to stop there. Gemini The unique battery electric multiple unit has returned to use, although at present only on test. We were asked by the railway to set up our cab ride equipment to record the extension to Rawtenstall for driver training. Sadly, we were not allowed to travel on board. The former RTC unit is seen passing through one of the stations to be reopened on the route. We close this section at Buckley Wells to the south of Bolton Street Station. The prize exhibit, well, pair actually, depart the preserved line back onto BR Metals. The building work on the right is the new covered accommodation for the East Lancs. Unfortunately, the connection with BR has been re-signalled as part of the light rapid changes to the Victoria to Bury line. No passenger trains can now use the connection. This has resulted in the loss of significant revenue for BR. The CFPS had hoped to run the Urton Sinner using a Class 40 from Ramsbottom to Bury, then BR motive power through Yorkshire. But that had to be cancelled. It is very likely then, with the termination of through trains to Bury in the spring, that this will be one of the last movements. The Post Office Class 114 and 128 were returned to Chester to resume their soon-to-be curtailed BR careers. From Chester, they would go to St Pancras, a service only operational during the Willesden blockade, and the last service operated by these units. In 8 days' time, both units would be withdrawn.
Staff training and route learning was necessary in April before the actual opening. And our first locomotive to be seen here is the RSH ELR number 1. Let's just take a look as it heads up the line. ELR number 1, of course, had come with us to Bury from Helmshire, and indeed this was perhaps one of the biggest locomotives that we brought with us. But the footage that you can see here is quite rare because it really didn't run that much afterwards. And following run round at Rawtenstall, we can see number 1 heading backwards. The view here from the road bridge over the Ewood Bridge and Edenfield station actually shows the section that was rebuilt by the Territorial Army for us, the Clifton branch. Take a look at where the white ballast is. This section of track was laid in one night by the Army. What an excellent effort!